Okay, so I kind of want to take a step backwards. You should have worked through Intro to 12, 12.1, and 12.2, which would have given you an idea that we have moved on to measurement. Measurement, for to some degree, is a review. Obviously, we will be covering it a little bit more in depth. And had we been at school, I talked about how I would have made you do a T-chart so that you understand that there is a difference between customary and metric and that you cannot convert between the two. So you can't go to your mom and say, Mom, how many liters are in a gallon? Because liter is on this side and gallon is on this side. Same with cups. You can't say how many cups are in a liter, because even though a liter is larger than a cup, they don't convert evenly because they are not part of the same system. So why we have two systems, I'm not sure. I know metric was more common in England and customary developed later. Both are still used. I would say we probably use customary more often if I were guessing, but I'm not 100% sure on that. So we are going to, I'm going to post a still picture of this T-chart, and I would really like for you to copy it down. If we were at school, I would have you copying it into your math notebook, but I think it's really important that you understand which of those measurements are on which side and which ones belong to customary and which ones belong to metric. The other thing that you really need to know is which ones measure length, which ones measure mass, which ones measure liquid volume, and so on. So these aren't in order, but inch, foot, mile, and yard, in order, inch, foot, yard, mile, measure length. Ounces and pounds measure mass. Cups, gallons, quarts, pints measure liquid, and fluid ounces measure liquid. And then ton would be back up here with pounds. So only those that measure the same thing or type of thing will convert. So you could say how many inches in a foot, but you wouldn't say how many yards are in a gallon, because that just doesn't make sense. And same with the metric side. Centimeters, millimeters, meters, decimeters, and kilometers all measure length. Gram, kilogram measure mass, and milliliter and liter measure liquid volume. So I am going to put a copy of this as well in the comments. And I want you to know that you don't have to memorize these. Eventually, some of them will stick with you, but it is okay to have to go and look it up. But you are able to convert all of it as long as you know how the first one is related to 1. So if you know that there are 16 ounces in 1 pound, you can figure out how many ounces in 2 pounds and how many ounces in 3 pounds. And you can use multiplication to do that. So you would take the number of pounds you're wanting to know how many ounces are in, like 4, and you would just multiply 4 times the number of ounces in 1 pound. Same with feet and inches. If you want to know how many inches in 5 feet, you would just multiply 5 feet times the 12 inches that are in every 1 foot. So if you want to know how many how many pounds are in 2 tons, you would multiply the 2 times the number of pounds in 1 ton. So that's how you're getting, you could even skip 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 and go all the way to 10. And all you're doing is the exact same thing that you did to figure out how many in 2 tons. You're multiplying by how many in 1. So you'd multiply 10 by how many pounds in 1 ton to give you how many pounds in 10 tons. So I did put a 10 at the bottom of each of these because that skips a few after the last one that I gave you, and it makes you have to try to figure out how many, whatever it is we're talking about, in 10 by looking at the relationship between how many cups in 1 gallon? How many cups in 1 pint? How many cups in 1 quart? And so you're going to have to use that. I'd like you to finish filling out this chart. I think it's good practice for you to see how those conversions are related. For all of chapter 12, this is very, very important. And then you would have this sheet as a reference for you to go back and look at if you're ever wondering again what that relationship is between those, or how many. I mean, you'd have it written right here if you needed to know how many inches in 6 feet. You'd have that written right there on your chart. So that would end up working out fairly well to have this sort of as a reference sheet. And like I said, if we were at school, I would have had you write it in your blue math notebook. So moving on, I do want you to know that we took 12.1 and 12.2, and we just sort of were able to introduce what we're going to be covering in chapter 12. We are going to skip around just a little bit because we want to make sure that you know everything you need to know before going into 5th grade. And I can't promise you that we are going to get that job done, but we are going to try our hardest. So today we are going to look at 12.3, but we're also going to look at 12.4 because we would love to be just a little bit further than I had originally planned, so that we can do something fun the very last week of school with area and perimeter. So still math related, but something the very last day of school, or the very last week of school. So we're still talking about customary, and now that you know this information, you should be able to buzz through both lesson 12.3 and 12.4. So Craig is going to be my writer again. And out of lesson 12.3, our goal is for you to be able to compare customary units of weight. Ounces and pounds are what we use to measure customary units of weight. And then it says, how did the size of a pound compare to the size of an ounce? So this has a number line. It does say to use colored pencils, but we'll just use our regular pencil because sometimes they bleed through. But this number line shows you that there are 16 ounces in 1 pound. We also saw that on this little cheater chart that we have made now, hopefully. And so you can see that relationship. So Craig, you're going to write this in. If you were using a colored pencil to shade 1 pound on the number line and then a different color to shade 16 ounces, you would have how many ounces to make how many pounds on that chart there? How many ounces? 16 to make 1 pound. So 1 pound is blank times as heavy as 1 ounce. Yes, 16. Okay, so the number line can help you to compare the sizes of the unit by, oh golly, I'm not going to have Craig write this out, but the number line can help you. I'm going to show you what the answer is. The number line helped me compare the size of a pound to the size of an ounce. It makes it easy to see that there are 16 ounces in a pound. So 1 pound weighs 6 times as much as 1 ounce. And yes, it's nice to have a visual like this. Are you going to draw that out every time you're trying to figure out how many? You have to know that information anyway to be able to draw it. So this is truly a better way to keep track until you get that memorized of how many ounces in a pound. So we are going to turn, I was on page 453. We are going to look at 454, and you are going to see something very similar to what I just had you fill out on your own on a piece of paper. There's a chart here. This is talking about Nancy, and Nancy needs 5 pounds of flour to bake pies for a festival. She has 90 ounces of flour. So we know the end result. We know how many she has, but we don't know how many pounds that is. She needs 5 pounds. So how can she determine if she has enough flour to bake the pies? So this table right here shows you that there are 16 ounces in 1 pound. Once we know how they are related in the first place, we should be able to fill in the rest of that, because all you're doing is thinking 2 pounds times that first relationship. So 2 pounds times 16, 3 pounds times 16, 4 pounds times 16, and 5 pounds times 16. Good. And filling that in would look like this. 3 times 16, 4 times 16, 5 times 16, and that's how many ounces she has. She needs 5 pounds